If I can see the PDF is beyond 30 pages, it's a red flag. If I can see the PDF is 60 to 80 pages, this is brutal. I just don't even look at it. Like, it just goes. And I know that sounds really harsh, and people think, oh my God, I've just spent all these months putting together 80 pages. The harsh truth to this is that it tells me that you don't have any idea how to edit the work, and that you think that you have 80 pages worth of good work, which is an astonishing amount of stuff, but also that you think the person receiving it has the time to look at 80 pages of graphic design and folios, right?
Welcome to Never Not Creative podcast. If you haven't listened to Never Not Creative before, Never Not Creative is a charity that focuses on trying to support people with mental well-being support in the creative industry, not just from things like support programs, but also through research, through programs that help people find work, and also other things around gender equality and making sure that people are well looked after in this industry. So one of the reasons that we put today's episode together was I wanted to be able to get some of the best brains in our industry from a variety of different perspectives to talk about the thing that whenever someone joins this industry kind of gets drilled into them as perhaps being the most important thing as they look to embark on their career, which is their portfolio. At Never Not Creative, we run a program called Never Not Finishing School, which is for people that have graduated but have yet to be able to find work. And one of the biggest questions that we get, and for support that we get asked for, is, can you do a portfolio review for me? How can I make my portfolio better? And often we will have really good chats around that, but also it's a very, I believe, small part of the puzzle in terms of actually being able to get on the ladder and be able to get your foot in the door in terms of opportunities in this industry, which it leads to the portfolio having to do a lot of work if that's the one thing that you're relying on. So we wanted to be able to set that up as a conversation today. And very lucky to have 4 people with me who were asked to give up their time and then politely offered. So thank you very much. I'm very grateful. And I'll do some introductions now. So we have Christopher Doyle. Chris is the founder and creative director of Christopher Doyle & Co., an internationally recognized brand and identity designer with 20 plus years experience running one of Sydney's most respected independent branding studios, having worked at Spotify, TikTok, Bell Shakespeare. He's worked at some of Australia's leading brand and design agencies and is a regular judge at D&AD AGDA and Award. His studio runs an open book program offering free folio reviews and mentoring. So Chris sees a lot of portfolios, has also won an award for his own. And I think, which is really why I'm sure it doesn't get pulled out enough, that piece of work these days, I'm sure. But it was something that I was always remember you for. It's very grateful to have you here to be able to offer your perspective on the world of folios.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Next, we have Tarra van Amerongen. Tarra is the new SVP of Design at Xero, a senior design and innovation leader heading product design at Xero. Tarra has also previously led businesses and teams at Atlassian, ThoughtWorks, Us2, and Fjord. Her superpower is driving design's role in creating business value. What leaders look for beyond visual craft, strategic thinking, judgment, and measurable outcomes. Tarra's been on Asking for a Friend with us quite a few times as well, and always has amazing advice when it comes to careers. And so very grateful to be able to have you on this chat, Tarra. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks, Andy.
And then we have Mel Baillache, who's the Executive Creative Director for APAC at Koto, a celebrated brand and digital creative director and D&AD judge with 15 plus years across branding, digital and advertising, and now leading creative out of Koto's Sydney studio. Before Koto, she spent roughly 8 years as ECD at For the People. Recent clients include Netflix, Wright Games, and Meta. As an ECD who hires across disciplines, Mel will speak directly to what creative leaders are actively looking for at the moment. Thanks for joining us, Mel.
Thanks, Andy. Hey, everyone.
Very lucky that I've been able to work with a few of these people in the past. So it's nice to be able to reconnect as well. And then we have Quan Payne, who is the founder and executive creative director at Studio Payne. Quan's an award-winning creative director whose career spanned the US, South Africa, and Australia. He began at Frost Design as its youngest design director, then led Nike Creative in Portland for the London 2012 Olympics and the global Nike Plus launch, followed by New York roles for Chobani and Laird and Partners, where he worked on Swarovski and Calvin Klein. Back home, he was ECD at luxury brand agency Cornwell before founding Studio Payne. He's built a career through relationships and big brands and brings the perspective of someone who's been on both sides of the table. He also has a spade if we need it later on. So Thanks for joining us, Quan.
Thanks, Andy. Excited to be here.
Brilliant. Okay. Well, look, I'm very excited by the opportunity to have this conversation, and I'm going to try and guide it through. We're going to hear a lot less from me and a lot more from all of you, which will be fantastic. And I'm going to start with you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
Why does a portfolio exist? And who's it really for in your eyes?
I think that sounds like a really simple question, and I think it sounds simple because it is. And I think that regardless of format and technology and form and all that sort of stuff, the core reason for it existing, I don't think really has changed since it was very first thing. In the history of design or advertising, whatever you want to call it. I think the primary audience for a portfolio is an employer. I think that really can't be overstated. I'm really curious to unpack what you were saying earlier about this not being, the core piece of the puzzle and not being the most important piece, because I think I have some hot takes on that. But yeah, I think the primary audience is an employer. I think the secondary audience, which really is not to be overlooked, is the employee or the designer, because I think in the same way that a studio case studies and documents its work, it's really, really important for designers, regardless of whether they're looking for roles or out there sort of hitting the streets, to document what you do, to keep a catalog and a record of what you do. So there's a lot to be learned and observed and to grow from while documenting and sort of, I guess, cataloging your own work. But I really think, yeah, the primary audience to me is the employer. I mean, this is why these, as I said, regardless of format and all that kind of stuff, which I'm sure we're going to get into, all of those things aside, the purpose of these documents is to help you gain employment, I believe. Yeah.
So let's not dilly-dally around the point around hot takes.
Yeah,
I think we should get into that. And so also the point of having lots of different people on this chat is lots of different perspectives, because the reality is when you're out looking for jobs is that there are different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
Actually, I think I remember seeing on LinkedIn a few months ago, someone put up how having open to work on your LinkedIn profile was not a good thing to have. Whereas actually, as someone looking for people, sometimes I want to know if you're available. And there's there's so many different opinions, but I think you were driving at how important the portfolio is, perhaps, in terms of.
Are you asking me to deliver on my hot take? Yeah.
Your hot take, please.
Hugely. I'm conscious of contradicting what you're telling students in all these courses, which sounds fairly set in stone and has been for a while. But I mean, it is really we talk about portfolio in person. That's how we talk about it internally. And I really think you can't overstate the importance of the folio. The person is hugely important, but I think that is a much more nuanced conversation around culture fit and all those kind of things, which I'm sure we're going to get into. The portfolio is still, to this day, the most concise and real and immediate example of whether or not this person can do the job that you're hiring them to do. That I'm not hiring people to do really anything other than to flow into our workflow and our culture and start to make work. And that folio is, ideally the most up-to-date and accurate version or example of whether or not you can do that work. It springs off into, can you talk about it? Can you explain it? Can you chat through it? What do you like in the room? There's all of these other variables that come into it. But really, when the rubber hits the road, it's proof of a skill set and a history. And I think that as an employer, it's hugely important. Yeah.
Okay, Tarra, I think you might have a point of view on this.
Yeah. In reality, I don't get a portfolio with every applicant, but I would say it certainly helps. So I do want to scan a CV to see if even that is, put together well visually, with a bit of character and looks interesting, but also checking for the relevant experience. I think the portfolio is like a sales and positioning tool to say you can do the job, and it's a gateway to a deeper conversation, to the interviews. So if I check your CV, looks about right, I open your portfolio, that's kind of for me the second step. And that is a yes or no to pass you on and kind of use the team's time to spend more time digging a bit further. And so is it exhaustive? No. Is it just getting access to the team to start talking about the work in more depth and checking other skills? Yes.
Yeah, I agree with both. I mean, I think for us, it's somewhat of a cost of entry, if you will. Like, I agree with Chris's point, the portfolio and people, and obviously the people side comes into it at a later stage, but it is about getting your foot in the door and getting yourself kind of remembered and recognized. Like I remember when Chris came out with his, folio many years ago. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like that was incredible. And it was so memorable. And I guess like an experience share from myself is when I went to Nike and I got hired by them and I said, oh, what in my folio did you guys actually like that got me the job? And I was like, oh, I work for, I thought at the time, a really terrific design agency, globally recognized or whatever. And they said none of that work, like none of the award-winning stuff at the front. It was like, I really like creating fonts. And at the time, so every job in my own time, I just like create some fonts and stuff. And I just chucked it all at the back of the folio. And they said it was actually that stuff that got you the job. So like, I think folio is kind of a funny thing because we kind of put it into this box of like going, it is a record of your work, but it can be so much more. And I think like Chris's experience in delivering that and even just my own experience, it's an understanding that shows you actually have a thought about a process or a thinking beyond a specific job or a process and just really being memorable to a potential employer.
Yeah, one thing that I would add, and I think this is also a little bit based on my own experience, is sometimes a portfolio helps you get over the line of not being necessarily at the quote unquote right studios beforehand. So I think like, for instance, when I moved into digital years ago, I had an advertising portfolio, but it was the work in those campaigns, the design quality, the craft that actually got me the entry point rather than it being, I'd been in a digital agency or anything before that. And I think that for me also is something that I carry forward when I look for people now, because I think sometimes if you're just looking for those agency names, it can absolutely cloud your judgment. And sometimes people get completely discounted because, they haven't worked here or they haven't worked there. So, maybe they can't do the job when that's just not the case. So I think for me, that's another reason where the portfolio kind of shines. And if you're not putting that in front of people's eyes, then you could kind of lose an opportunity before you even, put your foot in the door.
So I think to come back to something you said, Chris, I think one of the things that we notice in Never Not Finishing School is that it's almost like everything becomes about portfolio. And the reason that is concerning sometimes is that nothing becomes about them. And it's just like, the portfolio will get me the job. Where I think what we've kind of talked about through this is, in one way, it's actually that the portfolio articulates you as well and helps you be able to kind of shine through.
I struggle with this though as well. There's a couple of things to say here. I struggle with the kind of thing where we say, yes, it's the portfolio, it's also about you, because I think that is such a complicated thing to discuss because it opens up a huge conversation around culture fit. And if I'm completely honest, a whole bunch of things that are really kind of indefinable about whether or not people match certain businesses or click with certain businesses or studios or personality types and things like that. I think it's actually a really tricky conversation. But the idea, I think, which I think is what you're kind of like alluding to as well, is that the folio becomes an expression of you or a way for you to reveal yourself and your personality. I, as somebody, as we have discussed, who once centered themselves in that process as well quite directly, let's park that idea. But if we talk about traditional folios that contain work, I personally don't. I err on the side of neutrality with that sort of stuff. I think what Tarra was saying, the idea of elements of a personality or a tone or an energy that comes through, to me, it's a very delicate touch. I don't want to see folios that are really expressive and connected back to the person's personality. And the main reason I don't is because we are firmly in the camp of believing that our job is to actually help other people communicate. So the more you dial up a personalized folio that is less commercially aware and more personally kind of invested, the less to me that speaks to adaptability and being able to kind of traverse multiple clients and different disciplines and stuff like that. Not to the point of invisibility, but if you had to ask me where I land, I would rather err on the side of neutrality to the point of invisibility with the person on the folio than I would this very colorful, expressive thing that shows me the personality of the person. So, and I've had this debate with people, and a lot of people disagree. But I think to me, it should be a very neatly, easily accessible catalog of work that shows that you have the ability to adapt and start working on a variety of different clients and processes and types of work. And the more that becomes about the person, for me personally, the less I'm able to see how those things will connect when put into our business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for people then trying to get foot in the door, it's just a very fine line to tread, isn't it? Like at that point, then you've got to really like double down on that and be able to execute really, really well to be able to show across those things.
Yes and no. I think to Quan's point about being, the memorable thing I think is spot on. I think sometimes we confuse memorable for being, I sent like a giant like box of tortillas with my face like burned into them. You know what I mean? Which, to be honest, is just fucking annoying. Like I don't want, like, we have a thing on our website that says no packages. Like, don't send me a giant thing of stuff. Like, so memorable to me, you can redefine that in different ways though, right? Memorable can be about a really, really cleanly, well thought out folio that shows, a really, really intelligent way to write and talk about the work and express why you work at the studio. Sprinklings of personality and individuality and all that kind of stuff I think are perfect. But I don't think there's a black and white or easily definable way to say what that is. I think it depends on the person. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Tarra?
I love this aspect of expression and being memorable because I'm probably an outlier in this group, having transitioned into design mid-career and being acutely aware that I didn't have the work to put in a portfolio, and that if I wanted to make it in design, I could never send my CV or portfolio. I would never, get past the first screening from the talent team or anyone who opened my stuff. So being memorable was for me going, they have to meet me first. They have to feel my energy. They have to know what I'm talking about. We need to explore how I can help them rather than doing, what has happened past if you haven't gone to design school or you don't have 3 to 5 solid case studies. So knowing that about yourself, about where you stand, whether the portfolio is strong, whether you have one, do you have enough to pull it together? I actually sent across a YouTube video to an employer to say, hey, this was me holding a talk to the grads talking about design. And that got me the interview. And the interviews went great. And 3 interviews in, the HR department was like, where's your CV? We only hire blah, 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 blah. I was like, yeah, it's coming. And I waited until I got to the final round and then being like, yeah, we're going to sign you up. And then I sent in my CV kind of later as like a tick in the box kind of thing, because I knew I wouldn't have entered that funnel. So there are ways to go around it, but it is definitely the exception. And now as a hiring manager going, it's a really key tool that really helps. And also to Chris's point, seeing breadth of work where you can apply an existing brand identity that's memorable and push it further and execute well in that versus doing something that has a bit of your own creativity added to it. You're able to see those things very quickly and very easily as a hiring manager.
Yeah, great perspective. And I think that's why this conversation is good, because there are a few different ways in to how we get seen, but then also how we get appraised for the work.
I think one of the most obvious or probably accessible examples of this is the huge difference of opinion on students having their own logos and like brand identities for themselves. You know what I mean? Like, it's like schools. There's certain to be some schools of thought where it's like, you need a logo. You need this really clever logo mark and a wacky typeface and all this kind of stuff. And you need to brand yourself. Which to me is just like, I'm the absolute other end of the spectrum. I would rather see black and white slides with just some very thoughtful type, everything stripped back and just show me the work. But then you have universities and schools and people sort of pushing people completely the other way as a point of difference and standout. And I think to your point, I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do that. And that's unfortunately challenging for students because you're kind of guessing, cool, like, what does Tarra want? What does Mel want? What does Quan want? What does like Chris want? And the reality is we probably all want slightly different things, but it's tough for students. So it's actually just turning into a really shitty answer. So it's not hopeful at all. But the logo thing is a good example. I don't know if you guys have had that experience. Some students come out going like, oh my God, I haven't got a logo. And I'm just like, who cares? Like, you just not that important, right?
Yeah. Quan, what's your take on that?
I think that I guess there's a fine line as well, like to what Chris was talking about. I guess the challenge is you don't want to ever lock someone into the limitations of potential their past experience. And I think that's kind of can be challenging, is like, I think Mel alluded to it, like, and so did Tarra. I think that if you've got someone talented, but they haven't been able to get a job, and they've gone into a space that they're literally nutting out, I don't know, like resizes for a digital ad. I guess it was just more around, I think that there's kind of a space for not necessarily like putting personality all over it, but just showcasing their thinking outside existing scope. And, we've been seeing a lot of university folios, and the briefs are starting to become quite limited, or there's a homogeneity to some of the responses because they're seeking certain metrics within the university system. What always stands out to me is kind of a thinking differently, or approaching a problem. But unfortunately, in some of those kind of spaces, so whether that be a previous employer or an education system, those don't necessarily yield the results that they're looking for. So you often see like students or younger designers steering away from them. So I always encourage people to if to kind of showcase a passion for the creative industry, and whether that being doing things outside a brief, I'm always interested in, just purely because like it's served me well, and I like to see that people are really passionate about the industry and that they're wanting to get into.
Mel, trying to jump in here?
Yeah, just very, very quickly. I think just to build on that last point, one of the things that always used to be pushed was the self-initiated to stand out as well. And I think one thing I would say is I appreciate not everyone has time to do that. That's just the reality of the world that we live in. So I think we've got to be mindful of that too. But the other thing is one piece of really good advice I did get back in the day when interviewing, when I was then trying to get into brand, was basically like, oh, you had a brief. It was like a freelance project I was doing, but the brief was just a logo. And they just said to me, it's such a nice little idea. I would have loved to have seen what this could have meant, like in a few other applications. And so I think it was more not just coming up with something purely from scratch, but if you've got something really cool there, and this applies to university students as well, but it's a really narrow brief at the beginning, if there's room to expand it, you can definitely do that, and then just kind of show the full breadth of what it could be, or not even the full breadth, but just a little bit more.
Just more, yeah.
And I think that also does help, especially with, I would agree, like a lot of the university or grad student portfolios are very much same. Here's our this, here's our that, here's our... And so it becomes homogenous, and then you kind of feel like you're just looking at the same thing over and over. So I feel like that is the kind of piece that does help, and it does require a little bit of a lift and a push, but you're not starting from scratch, at least.
I mean, I totally agree. I also think it's quicker, cheaper, and easier to do that extra push that Mel's talking about than it's ever been before. Like there's, even when people kind of go, I haven't got money for mock-ups, it's like, man, the free mock-ups now are at a level that were the paid mock-ups when I started out. So that's how everything's been lifted up. And it's like, yeah, if you've got a logo for a restaurant, then you actually have like 4 or 5 other applications that are really easy to build out, that, as Mel said, becomes just a bigger story, and each become opportunities for graphic design, and it shows initiative, it shows a broader story, and it makes it seem bigger than it was before. I think that's spot on. Totally agree.
Yeah, definitely. Which is also how we would sell design work as well, right? Like that's,
sure.
If you're going to see a client or you're trying to win a pitch or something, like being able to show the expanse of an idea, which usually, we always used to say that you can tell an idea is good if it just gives you lots of good ideas. And, you can just keep going with it, right?
Yeah. I mean, branding is an exercise in what something can be at the start. It's not, all those things don't exist when you first present to a client, and that's true of agencies or students or any designer. So it's like, if you think about it through that lens around what could this turn into, it opens up a whole world of stuff, within what you can reasonably manage. Why not have a crack?
Yeah. So, unsurprisingly, the first question went for quite some time.
Yeah.
But in a good way, because I think we've covered...
like a 6-episode arc where we just meet every Thursday for the next 4 weeks.
Okay. But I think we also jumped into a lot of things that were elsewhere in our little discussion guide. But let's jump into I think one of the things that is concerning for people, especially if you're coming into the industry and trying to get noticed or trying to get a job at the moment, is like what is it that's getting looked at? And I think it's why so many people ask for, well, can you review my portfolio so I know it's going to get me seen? So let's start with you, Tarra. You've got, and this is the other thing, roles are getting 400 or so applications at the moment, right? Like crazy amounts of people applying for jobs. 30 seconds with a portfolio. What are you doing? Like, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I'm looking for a few things. I just want to see if it's set up well. So I'm looking for like a little bit about you, the role you're applying for, key skills, obviously some case studies, 3 to 5, not 10, not exhaustive. Maybe a tiny little bio about yourself and your contact info. That's what I'm looking for. And one of the reasons you are pulling up the portfolio is because it's that rich creative depth based on the work that's listed in your CV. So I do want to see some visuals of the work, knowing that you can compose it well, you can call out some key statements, that you can do the layout well, that you've got hierarchy in the information, and I should be very, very quickly be able to kind of go through and see that it's all there. Quite often, if I do a quick scan, they say like the average portfolio only gets looked at for 3 minutes. I'll probably take less. I'll do a scroll through. If I recognize any of the work or the brands, I might kind of go in there, but then I'll often refer it to a principal or staff designer to say, what do you think? So that's kind of the take I look there. And if I am not able to kind of see the reason the talent team sent it to me, or, the alignment between what is in the portfolio and the role that they would be filling in a very easy, simple, and accessible way, then you've kind of lost me in that 30 to 60 seconds.
Now, on an Asking for a Friend, I think it was a couple of months ago, you said that if I can't see evidence of using AI in your portfolio, I'm probably not going to be interested in hiring you. Because, and I think that at the time, that was, you'd spent such a long amount of time with the team that you're working with at that point, trying to go, well, look, how are we using AI in our work? Is that still a big thing for you now as well? And
yeah, 100%. Because look in-house, Andy, I've moved around a little bit. So in the last 12 months, I've been at Atlassian and ThoughtWorks, and now I'm at Xero. And every single team is on its own journey of really uplifting. So I want, obviously, to bring in skills that are kind of at the front. Now, I'm also very aware that not every company is allowed to use it, or the procurement and the licensing and the costs. And, even if you work at the bank or in government, things are very locked down and you may not have access to it. But you can show the use of AI in how you present your portfolio. So there's a really great example. I'll share a link later. There's a free Maven course, or Maven, however you say it, saying if you don't have the ability to use AI in your work, one example was a portfolio where they put in an AI bot and then, had this huge markdown file where you could ask about their skills and more about their experience, and you could ask things about this person. Or you could share that, you created this website with your interactive portfolio using that tool. So there is the expectation that if you can't do it on the job, you're doing it on the side. But also now, there's just an AI competency test when you're coming in for a lot of these roles. So it is very much, it's like a driver's license to play at this point in time. And everyone knows that we're all at varying different levels, and every company is also at varying different levels of maturity. And the person evaluating your competency is also at different levels of maturity. But you should be prepared for it.
Yeah, sure. Where everyone just looked away. Where do the rest of you stand on evidence of AI or literacy of AI in work at the moment? Mel, I might come to you just because I know, the types of brands Koto's working with. I'd expect there's some sort of expectation around AI literacy and where it's going.
I don't know if we have, like when we're in hiring, if we're putting it under the lens of portfolio and looking for new people, I don't know if I'd say there'd be an expectation for us that you can use it. I think naturally, even seeing people, grads, they're already playing around with it because of the exact reasons we've talked about. It's a bit of a shortcut to get some of their ideas out. So I feel like, some literacy is good. Like it would be great if you know what these tools are and you've at least dabbled. But I think for us, we definitely have clients where we're not allowed to use it at all, like even in the concepting because of copyright, etc. And others where it's not really hugely imperative to the outcome of the work, even if that client themselves is a client that incorporates AI into their business in some way. So I think like it's a little bit of an on the fence answer, but I would say it's probably true. It's like it's great if you have that in your toolbox. It's even better if you can play, just mostly because it's a shortcut when we're concepting. But I think for the eventual outcome, we're still working with illustrators, photographers, etc. So it's like it's only really for us. It's helpful in the process of the work more often than not. And certainly for grads, I think if you've got that skill in your toolbox and you can say, hey, I can help, get you to these points quicker, then that's great.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a vast spectrum of approaches at the moment, right? Because of how much experimentation there is out there as well. An agency told me the other day that they pitched an AI photo shoot because the brand they were working with wouldn't have been able to afford a photo shoot. And so it's just, there's so many different ways of tackling that at the moment. Tara, you were going to drop in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's a really good call out about where the work lives. So, I mean, in large scale design, you do help a lot of just boring execution stuff that can be automated and no one wants to do so that the team can do higher order creative work. When you go to a creative studio or an agency, you want just that level of creative work, right? Otherwise, you're on Canva making your own posters. So the use of it in the organization at scale, is different, and it is about trying to in an environment, the business environment is really, really tight. That if we don't get people using AI to do the stuff that is not a good use of their time, we're just not going to be able to give them more time to do the higher order creative work. So it's not a replacement of, it's just saying the starting point is much higher. Let's just start there so I can actually get you really pushing the boundaries and doing better. And also because all the competition are doing it. If they can create something bespoke that completely disintermediates you, we have to kind of move forward. But I do think it's putting a higher value on the more unique things, on the things that really show character, that are really emotive and expressive, and things that just rock you to the core. That stuff's going to get even more valuable. And now it's also even more obvious. So people can see the slop a mile away.
Quan, you look very thoughtful.
I mean, gosh.
I think we should caveat all these answers with, we're saying this now, but in tomorrow even, or 3 months' time, who knows, right? So I think we're all in the same boat from that perspective.
Oh, this podcast is a self-destruct in 3 months.
Yeah, we're saying all of this, but I mean, the reality, the writing's on the wall for a lot of these things. I've had friends in photography and that have just gone out of business because there's just no one going there anymore. So this is a completely different subject, and and I think it would be imprudent of us to have the arrogance to say that nothing can't be replaced. I think that that's the danger of what this is. I think it's important though that we embrace change, and so back to the folio component of it is we don't necessarily require it or seek it. For us, it's I think everyone's kind of alluding to, it's about the delivery of the idea and the quality of that. The difference is really the barrier to entry now is the lowest it's ever been to deliver good quality outcomes. And I think that that's kind of really interesting in regards to, AI in general. The way it's structured is always going to drive you towards the middle. It's about kind of how do people craft ideas or solutions that push outside the kind of the mean of that. I had a junior designer come into the studio, and he said, I've been looking for a job for a year and I've gone to these agencies, and this creative director told me that they've replaced junior designers with AI. So it's it is a reality that our industry, particularly for entry level creatives, is an issue because it becomes a cost base. And it's not an answer to your question or probably about the folio, but it's just it's something that we've certainly seen. And and in our industry, we do a number of different things, not all large scale. We're seeing a lot of push. Just budgets are getting slashed, and being able to deliver high quality outcomes, you tend to have to use those aspects to be able to deliver. Obviously, you always want to use people where possible, but it's just not feasible with, some kind of, particularly in an economic environment that's restricting. Sorry, that was not a lot of kind of sidetracks there.
No, I mean, I think it's kind of where I also, apologies, missed some of that because my headphones decided to give up halfway through. But maybe they were AI and they didn't like the sound of it. But yeah, look, it's such a. I do think in the last 3 to 6 months, that the conversation is starting to mature a little bit more around AI as we work out what it can and can't do at this point in time. But I think it's also a real tough one for people to navigate who are coming into the industry. I was on a panel in London, and often we'll talk about this idea of like, oh, we want new people into the industry because they've got fresh ideas and they're the ones who are using the new technology. Well, I think a lot of the time, in my experience, they're actually not the ones in this particular experience. They're not the ones using the new technology necessarily. And certainly we've done research around AI to show that the people leaning into AI are more 35 plus than they are the sort of 18 plus and coming out of universities as well. So it's just a really interesting, I think, topic to see kind of where people sit with it and also what the expectations are around it as well. Let's get back to the portfolio and like the looking at it and like we've talked about, you get 3 minutes, maybe 30 seconds, maybe. We've talked about what the base level should be, like it's well put together as well. But then we've got down to maybe 100 applications and we're looking at who gets an interview. Mel, how do you pull out the one that goes, oh yeah, or the 5 that go, yep, they're going to get interviews? What is it that you've seen?
I think I'd have to caveat this with it. It depends on the designer you're looking at or the level you're looking for. Because, if I'm looking for, say, which I am right now, a design director versus a junior, the expectation in that folio and perhaps the time given is going to probably be quite different. But I think like across the board, you'd probably be, it is true, you're kind of going through hundreds. So I think to Chris's point, I kind of like to be able to get to the work very quickly. And so if it's very clear, I understand it. So first thing is not too many. And then that also helps me get into the work much quicker. It's explained in, it could be on a paragraph on a page. You shouldn't have to over explain, or worse, have no explanation. And then you're asking me to do all the work. So those are kind of cost of entry things, I would say. But then it's almost like, okay, you see so much work without ideas that if you've got one idea, I'm interested. If you've got 2 ideas, you're kind of like, okay, this is more interesting. If you've got 3 ideas, 3 out of 5, you're getting an interview. Because I think what I would say is, not every piece of work, and I've certainly done work where maybe the idea isn't a traditional idea. You could retrofit and say the idea is accessibility, and that's how everything has to come to life. It's but it's not every project that we get is going to be able to tick that really clean idea box in the way that I think we have all come to understand it. But I think that is the thing, whether you're a junior, a grad, a DD, a CD, that's the thing, in my opinion, that gets you over the line. Because even if I would never expect a junior to have the same level of polish or craft as a DD, say, I like you expect growth within, as you're growing in the job. But I think great ideas can come from anyone. You can be 18 and have a great idea. You can be 22. You can be, hopefully you can be 40 plus. So that, I think they're the things I look for at the end of the day.
Or 50, Mel, or 50, let's just...
I'm speaking to lived experience, Chris. Okay?
And I'm projecting. I'm projecting.
No, but yeah, it's very simple. It's very simple. It's, in my mind, ideas get you through the door, and they get you looked at. The personality piece becomes important. The cultural ad piece becomes important. There are plenty of people with great ideas who you don't want to work with. But I think people with good ideas who you feel like can add something to the studio, ultimately the people that you hire.
So for the people listening, because idea is a big word, how do you define an idea that you can see that there's 1, 2, 3 ideas in someone's work?
It is a tricky. I once upon a time wrote an article about this because I do mentoring for DNA New Blood. And there was a lot of, we'd ask students to come back with their ideas, and they'd come back and they would say, the idea is it's a website. And I'm like, well, the execution is not the idea. It's what's the thing that's underpinning it? Where's the insight that led you to how anyone can do a website, but what's the thing that actually kind of trickles through every application? You can riff off an idea in many different ways. So let's just say, I don't know, I'm probably going to come up with something terrible now and put myself on the spot. But let's just say that the idea is, what's something I've used before? Even if it's fun. Fun is the idea, let's make it really simple. The idea is because it's fun. Because this is something that Coder did. So that just meant that every expression of that idea had to live up to that piece of, whether you want to call it positioning or brand idea or whatever. That meant that if you're in an experience in store, you should feel that fun coming through. If you're on the website, you should feel that coming through. That can be through language. It can be through the visual expression of it. It can be through the expression, even what people might wear in store when you're interacting with them. So I think it's something that you can riff off in many different ways, but they still ladder up to the same thing. I don't know if that's too complicated.
No. I think, and also sometimes the simpler the idea, the better as well, right? I do remember a project many years ago for Darling Harbour and inflatables. I think that wasn't the idea, but it was something that kind of drove a lot of how it was executed, and it just went for miles and miles, and the team had so much fun with it. Chris, you've just been through Open Book. Ideas, obviously, I know, is a huge part of the way that you work. What are some of the things that what did you find was probably some of the most common advice that you were giving when you were going through that process with people?
The most common advice we were giving was probably, to be honest, it was probably more around the structure and setup of documents than it was the work itself. So I think, in the interest of time, I agree everything with everything Mel just said. I think you are looking for the kind of combination of things that look great and have a thought or an idea or so you can see the thinking. And I love that kind of if you've got 1, if you've got 2, if you've got 3, as that number starts to rise. But if 4, 5, and 6 were just great looking projects, that's also amazing, because you catch yourself kind of going, you want people that can think in systems and ideas, and you want to be able to see that thinking. You also, certainly to Mel's point, as people get more senior, the work just has to look great. You know what I mean? Not to reduce this down to aesthetics, but that is, I know that we love to talk about strategy and ideas and thinking and all that sort of stuff. Things just have to look great as well. This really is kind of a huge part of what we do, and I think it's sort of like a dirty word sometimes to go, this just looks amazing. And I think that's a large part of it as well. But to answer your question, honestly, the advice was dominantly around the structure and setup of documents. And I'm talking things as simple as, you would see people, we saw links, we saw PDFs, we saw Figma files, we saw custom websites. You saw a mix of things, right? I would still say the majority of people are still building out PDFs, which I think is fine. We love a PDF because you can catalog it, you can file it, I'd spacebar them, move them through. The thing I enjoy about PDFs versus websites is I control the navigation and the structure, right? So if you're time poor, to Tara's point, you're going to look at something for 3 minutes. We were telling students, we don't even pull PDFs into Acrobat. They go onto the desktop at most, and they get spacebarred and they get scrolled, right? So if I can see the PDF is beyond 30 pages, it's a red flag. If I can see the PDF is 60 to 80 pages, this is brutal. I just don't even look at it. It just goes. And I know that sounds really harsh, and people think, oh my God, I've just spent all these months putting together 80 pages. The harsh truth to this is that tells me that you don't have any idea how to edit the work, and that you think that you have 80 pages worth of good work, which is an astonishing amount of stuff, but also that you think the person receiving it has the time to look at 80 pages of graphic design and folios, right? So there's all these little kind of things that go off as markers for us that we judge. But I think a lot of, in the PDF world, A lot of students are still setting up A3 PDFs, not 16:9 PDFs. Students are setting up PDFs that don't have folios, don't have grids, don't have really clear text rules and layout rules as well. So we talk a lot with students about the idea that the folio is a project in itself. The folio is a project. And that doesn't mean that it has to be funny or clever or witty or have any kind of crazy surprises to it, but it has to have a thoughtfulness and a craft and a care as the thing that sits around the work, even if it's minimal, because that says to me that you haven't. I think students get far too, and it's understandable because it's a stressful process of focusing so much on the work that they gather it all up and they chuck it into an A3 document sometimes with Google fonts, which is just, again, wild to me. And I think there's some really easy wins there that we talked to about with students around formatting that you would take folios if they are in PDF form from being sort of 3 or 4 out of 10s to being sort of 6 and 7 out of 10s. And it's not even talking about work. Imagining the work is fairly solid or it's on its way to good, then I think all of those things that that Mel mentioned is like you want to get out of there and you want to get in there and move through it reasonably quickly. It's neat. You understand the navigation of it, all that kind of stuff. And actually, I think I'm not sure what students are being told at universities around portfolio document preparation, but I would love to get in there and have a crack because you see some wild things. And this is from students who've gone, we've just done a semester of portfolio building. And I just think,
what were you doing? Yeah.
When? What were the takeaways here? And it's not their fault, to me, there are some really easy wins there that make these documents so much nicer to receive on our end, and elevate them, I think, considerably from where they were. And that, to be honest, that's the bulk of what we talked about in these last sessions.
That's interesting. Yeah. Ultimately as well, and I think you said it right at the beginning as well, right? Which is, if you're not designing for you, you're designing for the people who are going to consume the work, whether they're an employer, whether there's someone who's going to buy a brand or a product. That's the same thing. So you have to think about how they want to consume it.
But I do, but this is where it gets, but it is tricky because this is where the flip to that is, to contradict my own, but that is that you do want to see a bit of that person. I do want to see, that's why I'm saying it's a very delicate sprinkling and reveal of personality that goes, oh, that's kind of interesting the way they did that, like our website is an exercise in plainness, right? Our studio website you couldn't get, it's almost to the point of invisibility, right? But there are 2 or 3 pieces of writing on that website that serve as like icebreakers for clients that have been there since the studio started, that clients still call out and go, oh, I love that little thing you did on the website. That to me was really funny. And it's not, and I'm not saying that I'm using it as a real world example that actually 90% of it is an exercise in getting out of the way, and 10% is an exercise in conveying a personality and a tone and an energy and what you're going to get from us as a studio. And I don't think that student folios should be thought about any differently to that.
Which is authenticity though, right? Like for some, that's absolutely bang on.
100%,
like I remember
100% it's about authenticity.
First 2 years, I think, for the people, we just had a manifesto. We didn't show any work on the website. And I remember a number of clients who said, we're gone with you because of what you believe. And then, of course, we got in the room, we were able to show them some work later that was really, really good. But it was a way of standing out that was authentic. And I think that goes back to what you said at the beginning, which is like, unless you've shifted careers from a tortilla branding truck, which we have branded, by the way, if you remember. Then
I do.
Sending people tortillas with your brand on them, your student logo, is probably not the way forward, right? And so I think that really does come back to, that's the way of being able to show, like, this is me, and it doesn't have to be over the top, right?
Yeah. I just add one more thing. This is the really annoying, this is the last thing I'll say about it. This is the most annoying version of this as well, is that during Open Book, a girl did bring in this box of custom-made things that were literally designed and personalized and for Emma and I in the studio. And the way in which she did it and delivered it completely threw me. I was just like, you're the best. This is great. You're super lovely. It was really keen. It was really thoughtful. It was really nice. So all of my stuff around no packages, no tortillas, I was just like, okay, cool. That's fine. This is acceptable. So this is what I mean. Like, there's no, you have these kind of rules and expectations, but this is why it's impossible to say it's black and white or it's binary, because the right person does the right thing or says the right thing or structures it, and you flip your whole what you would normally accept about that sort of thing. So it's tricky.
Great.
Yeah.
Tara?
Yeah, I wanted to come back to something Mel mentioned because I just want to represent the fact that design can show up and be executed in different ways. So there are people who are researchers doing a portfolio. I remember I completely was shitting myself as a leader saying, bring in your portfolio. I'm like, I don't want to represent, IC's work. What's my portfolio gonna look like? But it's all about fit. So there's 4 kinds of case studies. There's discovery, where you're showing research, insights, how did that, drive learning in the business? What tools did you use, the approach, etc., how you formulated the problem and came to, to extend the knowledge of the team and then what that led on to. There's also case studies on complex flows. So when you've got really complex constraints, I always look for those because we work in enterprise software. There's end-to-end projects, so 0 to 1, where it is like, hey, go ham and do some exploration and take something and then move it through to execution. And then you've also got like the strategy and leadership ones. And so, for example, on those ones, I'll share there's a team challenge, there's a client challenge, as well as there's a creative challenge at your altitude, and then going through the process. So the idea, to use Mel's language, might be, my team doesn't know what good looks like for design quality. So therefore, I created a metric and a spider graph, and we did an assessment, and we created the change management people to not feel threatened and gave them tools, and therefore we were able to increase the, capability of this. So I think it is important to think about fit, and that it could be broad in terms of what you put in the portfolio, because it's about match with that role.
Quan, I just want to give you a chance to jump in on the detail.
To be honest, I've forgotten what the question is. We've got, but realistically, I agree with what everyone else is saying. Like, you get so many folios. I probably spend less than a second on a page, and I just like scrub through it, and then I pass it off to the team, and then they kind of do a deeper dive, and then we get them in for a review. But like, it's hard to. Sounds so terrible because it's just like that gross social media speak, but it's like that scroll stopping kind of moment that you just, because literally you have to go through them so quick. So, and I think that, like I've said, idea is so critical. Like you just see often a lack of thinking in the work, and so I absolutely agree with what Chris, Mel, and Tara say.
Okay, wary of time, so I'm just going to jump to this last question around. Or I'm keen to jump into that other question as well. Two questions to finish off. One, which is, there is this idea that the portfolio is the trailer, but you are the film. And so if you've been able to catch someone's attention, which is why it is in its own right so important, how does that idea kind of sit with you all in terms of, yes, that's enough to get them through the door, and then now I'm going to appraise them, but am I still appraising them just on the portfolio? Can they talk about the work? And I think, one of the things that we often will talk about in Never Not Finishing School is help people to be able to express and talk about the work, rather than just showing something that looks well put together. Tara, I might come back to you because I did have this in your section, but how does that kind of idea manifest itself when you're chatting to people?
I think the portfolio is kind of the trailer for the actual case study review that you do as one of the interviews. I think like there's leadership or meeting the team. Those are kind of easy interviews, but the hard one is taking me through a couple of your case studies. And so I do think that the portfolio review tells me you've got probably the design chops. And then I want to see that if you've communicated it well in the portfolio, can you do that in real life? And then can I ask you questions like, when did you have to make a trade-off? Or how could you convince a product manager to do what you needed to? Or what did you learn from this project? Or if you had more time, what else would you do? To kind of test the thinking and also just make sure that the portfolio really came from them.
Chris, I feel like I triggered you when I asked this question. Did I? You got your hand up very quickly.
Yeah. Yep. I disagree. I think the portfolio is the film, and I think you are the DVD commentary.
Yeah. Can you explain to people what DVDs are?
Man,
Do you mean like the producers edit, like the behind the scenes? Is that what you mean?
Tara literally doesn't know. This is terrible. No, I mean the portfolio is the film, which I think this goes back to your original point, Andy, of like, this isn't the important thing. It's just the intro. I actually think the universe is true. I think it's hugely important. The DVD commentary, is essentially the people who have made that film, their opportunity to talk about it in great detail about what went on while that was being made. How did it get made? What were the challenges? What went wrong? What went right? What was the thinking behind the film? That to me, the portfolio is the feature film. Yeah, I think you are the credits or the commentary or the Q&A afterwards on the stage. If you, I mean, I'm not sure how many sort of metaphors I can run with, but yeah.
I think we're saying the
Yeah.
same thing, Chris.
Okay,
the
good.
portfolio interview is like 2 case studies, super in depth with all of those questions you mean. I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah, I like it.
just different
Yeah.
terminology.
Mel?
I was just going to say also, I feel like it sits in with this, but you don't have to give everything away in the portfolio either. You can save some bits for in the room so that, you're not sitting with someone and talking through the work and clicking through and they're like, oh yeah, I've seen that. Oh yeah, I've seen that. It's like you can show them a snapshot of it and then show the full breadth of it in the room when you're actually there to explain it, get people excited about it, whatever. So there is a little bit of, if we want to say that the portfolio is the trailer, which everyone is saying it is not. But anyway, that's fine. But you can kind of do the director's cut. Let's use the same analogy. You can do the director's cut with the additional bits in the room. And that gives you not only the chance for commentary, but it also gives you a chance to show that there's a little bit more that I even wanted to show you because I'm so excited about this work.
That's way better than mine. Director's cut is far superior. So
How about the stuff that made it, that was in the editing room
The cutting room
floor?
floor.
the cutting room floor, deleted scenes, the deleted scenes as well.
I've hired people because they showed me their prototypes that didn't get prioritized.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's great work, and that's why I want you. Conversation out of the end of the portfolio on the way to the lift. There's something you said there that was interesting. There's a lot of context around this.
Brilliant.
I think you're saying they've got to show the thinking and the quality of their thinking behind the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the things I think that we sort of noticed isn't coming out as much for people graduating, of being able to kind of do that part of like talking behind their work, right? Being able to explain why they made a decision or a trade-off like we talked about earlier. But those who can instantly kind of start to rise to the top. To finish off, a show of hands almost. How likely are you to hire a grad or a junior at the moment? And has that changed in the last year? Quan's up straight away.
Oh yeah, very likely. Like
no one. I was going to say no one else.
Yeah, preferably.
Yeah. So on that, I have a policy. I only hire juniors. So, and basically because when I started the studio, like my core philosophy was really about like the fact that I enjoy mentoring and seeing growth. So the first person that started with me is grad, she's still here, and 7 years later. So that's something that I really enjoy. So we always bring in graduates. That's hopefully a positive for them. You know,
great. Was that similar for you, Chris? Like you said, preferably as well.
Yeah, I just think. I mean, yeah, I had. We've obviously all probably had similar journeys. I just think there's enormous value in investing in people at that age and stage. And I like Juan, I think that the majority of people that I've had in the business full time have stayed for years, and you see that growth. And I personally, selfishly, just get a lot of joy out of that nurturing and that process. I had a really good experience of it, which in turn makes me, compelled to give somebody else a similar experience. And I think that, I just think it makes sense. That's the journey. And yeah, I mean, I just think there's a lot of joy and a lot of discovery and a lot of just energy that comes from somebody at that stage of their lives and their career as well. That there's that's just icing on the cake as well.
Yeah, I think in all of the news and kind of hyperbole around the AI is taking jobs, we don't need designers, we don't need this. I think all of that forgets about a lot of the drive behind people who work in this industry, which ultimately then ends up getting back to giving back. It's why we've been able to do so much with Never Not Creative. It's why you're all here on this right now as well. But usually it's not hard to get people to go, hey, would you like to get involved with this? Because we're doing it for people coming into the industry, or we're doing it with people who are not being given fair opportunities. And I think it's the one thing that people don't realize in their commentary of where the design or creative industry is going, is this industry's dedication to giving back and making sure that there's still an industry for the future. And I think that makes a huge, huge difference that sometimes gets missed in a lot of the commentary. If we finish on a one-liner for anyone focused on, we can be portfolio or basically next step in being able to land their next role, what would it be? What is your one-liner? And I was going to come to Mel, but she looks like she's still contemplating a little bit. So I might just let you off for a second and come to Chris first.
Oh, man. I've really just put all my eggs in that DVD gag, and it just, yeah.
He's like, I'm tapped. I'm out. I'm done.
No, I'm not. I'm not thinking about my one line. You know what? I'm going to give you a 2-worder, right? Keep going. That is all I would say to any young person trying to get into this industry or that's already in this industry in the wave of things that are coming at us. Keep going.
Thank you. Tarra?
I would also use 2 words, but with a byline, I would say curate and also configure. Just like they used to say, your cover letter needs to be bespoke per role. I also think the case studies you select and how you express the skills and your fit to that role also need to match.
Quan?
Wow, everyone's doing 2
That was
words.
not in the
I've got to fit it in.
The bar is here, buddy.
Yeah. I would say connect more. I think that we're in a space where, particularly where the industry is going, is it's commoditizing. So if we can connect better as humans, like that is really the special sauce for me, like of how you actually can retain and continue in this industry. So I would encourage that.
And Mel?
Mine is far beyond 2 words. It's a full sentence, so sue me. I would just say don't be afraid to reach out, but I would caveat that with don't go straight to the creative director. Go to the senior designer. Go to the design director. Go to someone within the studios that you love and talk to them, because often the most time poor are the more senior people. But as you've kind of mentioned, people want to give their time. And all of us got we all were given chances. And so I think that doesn't have to be from the top.
Brilliantly put. That was well worth the wait. Thanks, Mel.
Yeah, I'm changing mine to that. That's mine as well. Mel's fine with it. I'll talk to her about it later, but she'll be fine.
We should be
with
able to do something with AI after this, and just I can switch the answers around and
exactly. Just turn Mel's answer into mine. Exactly.
Chris, we're gonna make your new voiceover that the DVD came with free shipping and handling to really make it old school.
You have to change the DVD to something.
What is it?
The extras. The extras on Netflix.
That may be more resonant with today's audience.
Extras on Netflix. Oh my God.
Disney Plus. Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Yep.
Comments on TikTok? I don't know.
Yes. Yeah. God,
Yes.
that's where we're at. Comments on TikToks. Yeah.
A meme of the comments on TikTok.
Yes.
Which will be the trailer for this podcast. So we'll.
Excellent.
Well, look, we'll bring it to an end there. Thank you so much for all of your time, and also for really giving those different perspectives, because I think that shows people are going to have to work it out for themselves. But knowing that all these things are on as an option, and knowing that things will be received in different ways, I think is so important. And I think Terry sort of wrapped up at the end there with we've got to curate and configure the way into whatever the opportunity is that you're looking for. So spray and pray is over. Curate and configure, I think, is definitely much better. And yeah, thank you all so much for your time. It was great to be able to put this together, and really, really appreciate everything that you've been able to offer in this chat. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Andy.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.